It must have been about 12:30 when all of a sudden, big commotion begins. I heard him coughing and then her running and shouting my name in the hall. I just sat tight there, waiting to see what would happen. After a while, she come on down to the kitchen to fill up the water pitcher. "Didn't you hear my calling, you chicken?" she says. I just sat there and looked at her. She filled up the water pitcher and clumped it down on the table. "Lot's took sick," she told me. I didn't say nothing. He seems to be awful sick. I wanted to call a doctor, but he said no. He'd be all right in the morning. I didn't say a thing to her. "What's wrong with him?" she asked me after a while. "He's got TB, I told her. She put on a shocked expression. "How bad is it?" she asked me. I told her they'd let the air out of one of his lungs at the Memphis hospital because the x-rays had shown it was all eaten up with disease. "Why didn't somebody tell me?" she asked. She sat there and whimpered a little, and I said nothing, but I just kept on looking at her. "I've had a bad time," she told me. You don't understand how it is with a woman like me. I used to work in a dry goods store in Biloxi." "What, you planning to give me your life story?" No, she said. "I just wanted to tell you something. Then I was thin, and I hadn't dyed my hair, and I looked real pretty. I was 15 then, and I didn't go out with the boys. I was just as nice as any girl you could think of. But you can imagine what happened. The man managed the store, kept walking by me, and every time he did, he would touch my body. First on my arm, and then on my shoulder, and finally on my hips. I told my girlfriend about it. "Honey," she said, "just take him aside and have a sincere conversation. You tell him you're not used to that sort of treatment." So that's what I done. I went to his office at the back of the store. It was late one Saturday in the middle of summer. I said, "Mr. Porter, you seem to be taking advantage of the fact that you're my boss, to take some liberties with me, which I don't like because of my decent upbringing." But Charlie just grinned. He walked up to me and he put his hand on my hips. "Is this what you mean?" he said. And then he kissed me. And then it was all over with me. I tried to walk one way and Charlie pushed me the other. He kicked the office door shut and backed me up against the big roller top desk, and he took me by force right there. He had my cherry right there on that roller top desk. He was a man about 40 with sandy red hair. You know, the sort like a great big bull. And I fell in love with him. I got to admit, he made me so happy that summer, and my memories of it are still the best that I've got. They say you always lose your heart with your cherry. Well, I don't know about that. Some girls don't like it at first, but I got to admit that from the beginning, I loved it. She wiped her eyes on the edge of the tablecloth. Is that the end of the story? No, she said. It was only beginning. He got tired of me. Some girls, they'd have made trouble. I could have, because I was only 15 at the time, but I had too much pride. So I packed up and moved to Pensacola, then to New Orleans, and finally I come to Memphis. I picked up Lord on the street. He looked like a kid, sort of thin and pitiful looking. It touched me that he laid on me like a baby. He seemed so lonesome. And it's the truth that I loved him. He slept in my arms just like a baby would, and when he woke up, he said, would I come home with him and we'd be married? Now, at first I laughed. But then I thought, oh well, as the fellow says, that there's a hell of a lot more to it, this business of sex, than a couple people jumping up and down on each other's eggs. So I said, yeah. And we set out next morning. Now what shall I do? She asked. Do about what? I asked her. You? She said. The minute I laid eyes on you, the first glance I'd look at that big, powerful body, I said to myself, uh-oh, your goose is cooked, maybe. So, what shall I do about it? Well, I said, when somebody's goose is cooked, the best way to have it cooked is with plenty of gravy. I picked up the lamp off the table and started up the stairs. She followed on behind me. At the door of Lot's room, she stopped by, and I kept going. I went on up to the attic and dropped my clothes on the floor beside the cot and sat down on it and waited for her to come up, which I known she would do. I don't think I ever in all my life looked forward to anything so much as I did to that woman coming up to bed with me. It went 5 minutes before I heard footsteps on the stairs coming up to the attic, and then I realized I'd been praying. I'd been sitting there praying to God to send that woman up to me. What'd you make of that? What sort of God would pay attention to prayer like that coming from someone like me who was sold to the devil, when thousands of good people's prayers for the sick and the suffering and dying are given no mind? No more than so many crickets buzzing in the summer. But that is beside the point now. Point is, Lot's wife is coming up to bed with me. And when I heard her coming, it stood straight up. You could hang your hat on it. I spread my legs, and she come toward me and stopped beside the cot and stroked it and kissed it like it was something holy. She giggled and crooned and carried on like something outlandish. I just lay back and looked at the sky and enjoyed it. Finally, she wiggled up and got on the cot beside me. I felt of her body, so big and hot like a mountain that had a furnace inside it. I ripped the drawers off her bottom, and then I climbed on. She put the head of it in. I gave a push, and she yelled out, "God Almighty!" I drew it back and gave it another shove, and she said, "Oh, Blessed Mary!" She said her prayers all the time I was giving it to her, and when I come, she did at the same time. I swear her yelling nearly took the roof off. "Oh, Blessed Mary, Mother of God!" she shouted. I had to laugh. He must have heard her downstairs, because it was about that time he started bawling out our names. Now, even before I come downstairs in the morning, I known Lot was dead. And sure enough, he was. He'd gotten out of bed and crawled on the floor as far as the door to the bedroom. His body was stretched out halfway over the sill, and the blood, it was now dried in the hot yellow sunlight, had made a stream from the foot of the bed to where his head was resting. I wasn't surprised, because all that livelong night we'd heard him bawling out, "Murder! Murder! Murder!" Later on, I heard him calling my name out. "Chicken! Chicken! Chicken!" Once or twice, she said in a half-hearted kind of way, I reckon I better go down and make him hush that godforsaken bawling. But I said, no. Bawling's good for his lungs. So we kept right on having our fun up in the attic. And then it was quiet, and I thought to myself, Lot's dead. I called to Myrtle, and she come downstairs, too. We stood together in front of the door and looked at him. "Poor little kid," said Myrtle. She started to cry, but not very much or for long. "It's all for the best," I told her. And after a while, she said she guessed it was, too. We have our troubles, but we get on pretty good. As good as most young couples do in the country. We're expecting a baby about the end of the summer. If it's a boy, we aim to call him Lot in memory of my brother. And if it's a girl, I guess we'll call her Lottie. And now it seems like everything in my life is straightened out. I don't ever worry about them spiritual gates the preacher told me to keep shut. Not having no gates can save you a lot of trouble. And after all, what does anyone know about the kingdom of heaven? It's earth I'm after. And now I'm honest about it and don't pretend I'm nothing but what I am. A lustful creature determined on satisfaction, and likely as not to get my full share of it.